أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله فإن الله تعالى مع المتقين وبعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we have heard over and over again, and we have been informed from this minbar and from the manabir, generally speaking in the masajid worldwide, and as we will see in small video clips and reminders and so on and so forth for the coming 2 weeks, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us that siyam has been prescribed for us in order that we may acquire taqwa, a consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course we do not know whether or not we as individuals will reach Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make that the case. And if any of us are to pass away in the coming weeks, etc., may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reach Ramadan before He takes our souls from this life. But as a collective, we are going to witness Ramadan. As individuals, Allah knows best. But as a collective, we are going to witness Ramadan. And therefore, it makes sense to prepare for the month of Ramadan. And this is something that we hear every single year. Every single year, we hear, let's prepare for Ramadan. How can we prepare for Ramadan? Let's make this Ramadan special, and so on and so forth. And many of us, every single year, we look back at Ramadan and we say, if only I did this, if only I didn't do that, I wasted this month. And we say, inshallah next time, inshallah next month, inshallah next Ramadan that comes. But how many Ramadans are we actually going to witness? Allah knows best. We are not guaranteed Ramadan every single year. As was said last year. Last year, I said, there are individuals who are not going to witness Ramadan with us. Why? Because they passed away. Likewise, I'm saying again, there are individuals who are not going to witness Ramadan with us because they have passed away. In fact, we have members of our community that passed away last week, that passed away 2 weeks ago. And we have members of the collective community, i.e. the general community, the ummah, that are passing away as we speak. There are individuals that are passing away as we speak. Their souls are currently leaving their bodies. Perhaps in the hospital close to us, there are Muslims passing away as we speak. Allah knows best. And we always assume that it's going to be someone else. When we think of death, we assume someone else is going to pass away before I do. Who's going to pass away from my family first? We assume someone else. We don't say, I am. No one assumes they're going to be the next one to taste death. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every single soul shall taste death. Every single one of us. The angel of death is going to come with his helpers, and he is going to stand in front of every single individual one of us. And the helpers are going to help him in a good way or in a horrific way, depending upon the way we live our lives. That choice is ours, and we still have that choice to make. وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدِ. Why? Because we still have life. Because we still have life. And the point, of course, of this khutbah is not to talk about death, but to talk about Ramadan. To talk about Ramadan and to remind ourselves, myself included, of the fact that this Ramadan may be our last Ramadan. If we think back to the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, who would have assumed that the masajid would have been locked down for nearly 2 years or 2.5 years? None of us. And so we took the masajid for granted. We had to spend Ramadan whilst under lockdown conditions. Who's to say that the masjid will be open next year? If we are in existence as individuals, etc., who's to say the masjid will exist? Who's to say that my circumstance will allow me to go to the masjid? The person who is in a car accident, for example, and loses the ability to use their legs, does not plan to lose the ability to use their legs. The person who is afflicted with illness, chronic illness, and has to live in the hospital or at home, dependent upon machines and medication and so on and so forth. They don't plan to live in such a condition. A person doesn't say, I'm going to now become chronically ill. Of course not. But the question is, did they take advantage of their time prior to their sickness? For most, the answer is no, unfortunately. And we as onlookers, we look on at these individuals. We look at these individuals in their deathbeds. We look at these individuals in their chronic states of illness. We look at these individuals who have been afflicted with tests. And if they're patient, bi-idhnillah, they will receive reward. It's not to say that there is something wrong with those individuals. No, we're talking about ourselves who have not been afflicted with such as of yet. We all have family members who have. We look at these individuals and do we take heed? No, we don't. We don't. You find the person who has time is still lazy. The person who has health does not take care of it. The person who has wealth misspends it. The person who is young wastes his youth. And then he gets old. and he looks back and he regrets, just as those who came before him looked back and regretted. And the one who is healthy and becomes sick looks back and he is in a state of now regret. Just as those who became sick before him, they became regretful. And the one who had free time looks back and says, if only I used my time. Just as those who used to have free time and no longer have free time looked back before him and said the same thing. A vicious cycle. And the wise ones are those who take heed. Those who take heed. We have two types of experience in life. We have our own individual experiences, and then we have the experiences of the collective, the experiences of man. And we can find these collective experiences in the books of history. We can find these collective experiences by looking and benefiting from the lives and experiences of others. The young person looks to the old person and says, I don't want to be like that, i.e., I didn't use my life. The healthy person looks to the regretful sick person and says, I don't want to be like that. The sick person looks to a person who's in even more sickness than him or than her and says, I don't want to be like that. It's the unfortunate reality of life. Some of us, we become the examples for others. That's life. We become the examples for others. And that's why it's important for those who have had those experiences to become role models and teachers for those who they have left behind. And so this Ramadan, we have to try to treat it like it may be our last, because there is a strong probability that it may be our last. If you ask yourself a simple question, a question of probability, which of the two is more likely? That I will live for the coming year, or that I will pass away in the coming year? Which of the two is more likely? Allah knows best. We cannot guess. We cannot guess. But which is more likely? Am I guaranteed life? Am I guaranteed life? No. Am I guaranteed death? Yes. So death outweighs life. The probability of death outweighs the probability of life. Therefore, I should take the life that I have very seriously. I should take the opportunity that I have and utilize it while I still have it. When you're young, you believe you're going to be old forever. Likewise, when you're healthy, you believe you're going to be healthy forever. Likewise, as living individuals, we live as if we are going to live forever. But the reality will come where a person will say, do you remember? Put your name in this box. Do you remember? So and so. That person passed away yesterday. That person passed away this morning. That person passed away this evening. That person passed away last night. That person passed away in the afternoon. You are going to be in one of those sentences. I am going to be in one of those sentences. Do you remember? Enter your name into the box. He passed away. She passed away. Are we taking advantage of that which we have in front of us before that sentence comes from the mouths of others? When I'm being carried to my place where I'm going to be buried, if I'm buried, because there are individuals, they pass away in a manner wherein they cannot be buried. Another reality of life. Bi-idhnillah will be buried and prayed upon by the Muslims. If that's the case, what are they going to say about me? Are they going to say, do you remember that person? Which one? The one who used to pray 5 times a day. The one who used to pray his or her sunnah prayers. The one who used to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. The one who used to give sadaqah. The one who was always helpful. The one who always used to smile. The one who used to say salam to everyone. The one who didn't used to argue with others. The one who was good to his wife and his kids. The one who used to teach Islam, teach the Quran, and so on and so forth. Are they going to say that about you? Or are they going to say, do you remember that person? Which person? The one, Allahul Musta'an. He used to sell alcohol in his shop. The one who, Allahul Musta'an, he used to sell drugs. He used to drink. He used to have girlfriends. He used to do this. He used to rob. He used to steal. And so on and so forth. What are they going to say about us? Do you remember that person? Which one? Did he used to come to the masjid? I don't remember. No, he hardly came. Sometimes he used to come on Jum'ah. Oh, I remember now. That's going to be the reality for all of us. That's going to be the reality for all of us. Think about the janaiz that we've attended. The janazah prayers that you've attended. What was said about those who were placed into the ground? Such descriptions. What will be said about us? What will be said about us is dependent upon how we live our lives. That's the reality, unfortunately. And so Ramadan is an opportunity. It's a milestone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this opportunity to what? To make changes in our lives. To make changes in our lives. And so, going back to the point, what will people say about you if you are buried today? If you died today, this evening, this afternoon, what will people say about you? And now think, what do I want them to say about me? Not for their sake, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that you are, to the Ummah of Islam, you are Allah's witnesses on His earth. You are Allah's witnesses on His earth. Meaning, that which you say in good testimony about those who have passed away, bi'idhnillah, is what will be seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now the question, what do I want people to say about me when I am placed in the ground? And the second question, how can I become that person? And now the third question, how can I use Ramadan to start my journey in becoming that person that I want to be when I'm buried in the ground, eventually when I pass away? Which brings me to the first point, which is a very important point in the preparation for Ramadan and for any act of ibadah, which is what? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Every action is by its intention. And so we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our intentions for Ramadan, firstly. Secondly, we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our intentions to become the individual that I want to die as. And when I think about who do I want to be, I should think lofty. I should think lofty. I shouldn't say to myself, I want to be someone who prays 5 times a day. That's fantastic, but that's not enough. If you aim for the sky, you'll get somewhere close. You aim for the stars, you'll get somewhere close. The 5 prayers are the foundation. That's a starting point. That's a starting point. But we want to aim high. We have to have individuals in our community, local and general, larger community, that have lofty aspirations. I want to be a person that revives Islam. I want to be a person that brings guidance into the homes of others. I want to be a person that follows in the footsteps of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and so on and so forth. I want to be a person that builds mosques for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. And there's a famous saying, if you are truthful with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will be truthful with you. Meaning what? If you have a true intention, Allah will give you a true result. A person may say, I want to build masjid. I want to call people to Islam. I want to educate people. I want to help people become independent, financially independent, and so on and so forth. And they don't have the means in front of them. If you're sincere and you take the adequate necessary steps, Allah will provide you with the means. So back to the question, what do I want to look like when I am placed in the ground? And the second question, how am I going to get there? The third question, how can I utilize this Ramadan in order to get there? So if I'm not praying 5 times a day, the starting point is what? To pray 5 times a day. The end point should be what? To be praying 5 times a day, to be praying the rawatib, to be praying tahajjud, to be praying extra prayers, and so on and so forth. The starting point is 5 times. And you build. If I have not memorized any of the Quran, my goal should be what? To memorize a good amount of the Quran, if not the entire Quran. Why not? Why not memorize the entire Quran? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can bless anyone with the memorization of the Quran if that person puts in the effort. Any person can step into the gym and lose weight. Why? Because they put the effort in. Likewise with memorization of the Quran. I can memorize the Quran if I put the effort in. But the effort is not simply in the repetition of the ayat. The effort is likewise in the way I live my life. I should have that aspiration. Why? So that when I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to me, read and rise to your final place in paradise. And I recite the Quran, the entire Quran, and I have a lofty place in Jannah. Why? Because I memorized His word for the sake of reading it to Him when I meet Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I'm preparing for death, Allah has given me a shortcut. Why not take it? And so, back to the point. I should have an aspiration in the Quran. For this example, I want to memorize the Quran. Or I want to be reading a chapter of the Quran every single day. Before I leave this life, I want to get to a place where I am reading a chapter of the Quran every day. I'm finishing the Quran every month. What state am I in now? I can't read the Quran. So where do I start? I have to learn how to read the Quran. So this Ramadan, what's my goal? I am going to learn how to read the Quran by the end of the month. And then you can think about next Ramadan. You achieve your goal. Now you can read the Quran. Where do I want to be by next Ramadan? Let me use that year to get there. And so every Ramadan becomes a milestone in your journey toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fasting, a person may want to fast voluntarily, but they're not able to right now. Why? Because they're not used to it. Ramadan gives them the opportunity, opens the door. Fast for 30 days. If you're fasting for 30 days consecutively, fasting once a month, you can handle. And so I make that my goal. I say to myself, by the time I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the time I die, I want to be a person who's fasting every Monday and every Thursday. So how am I going to use Ramadan to help me to get there? By opening the door to fasting. And so on and so forth. My akhlaq. I might say, I want to be a person of good character. Why? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the people of good character will reach the stations of those who pray the nights and fast the days. Why? Because good character requires hard work. So what do I say to myself? I say to myself, in Ramadan, I'm not allowed to argue. I'm not allowed to shout. I'm not allowed to use foul language. I'm not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to continue that outside of the month of Ramadan. And so Ramadan becomes my starting point. It doesn't start with Ramadan and end with Ramadan. It starts with Ramadan and ends with death. That's how I have to see it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده وصلوات ربي وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء ومن تبعه وبعد. A person may say to themselves, by the time I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to be a person who does not commit sins. Is that possible? It's possible. Meaning what? I don't consciously commit sins. The sins I commit are sins that are made in mistake, in error, and so on and so forth. Minor sins. I want to avoid major sins. I want to be a person who is living on halal and completely staying away from haram. And the only sins I commit are sins wherein I'm slipping up, etc., etc. So how do I get there? I use the month of Ramadan to what? To reduce my sins. I use the month of Ramadan to stop any bad habits that I have which are sinful. For example, it may be smoking. I say to myself, if I can go for 30 days without smoking in the daytime, then I can stop smoking completely. Why? Because I want to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I'm not smoking. And if we need any extra drive, we simply have to look to the descriptions of paradise and the descriptions of hellfire. In a weak hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, sin in accordance to your ability to be patient in the hellfire. Meaning, if you can be patient with the hellfire, sin as much as you want. No person can be patient in the hellfire. And so I have to remind myself, if I sin, I'm taking myself to hell. If I do righteous good deeds, I'm taking myself to Jannah. And so Ramadan becomes the starting point for living life in a certain way. And I'll conclude with an example in our societal actions. I may look to myself and say to myself, I'm a bad husband. A woman, a sister may say to herself, I'm a bad wife. Is that permissible? Is it permissible to pray 5 times a day, pray the sunnahs, to fast, and to stay away from major sins outside of the home? But in the home, I'm a bad husband, I'm a bad wife, abusive, not giving my spouse that which she deserves, and for the lady that which he deserves. No, that's not permissible. That's not permissible. And so I say to myself, I want to be a good Muslim in the home. I want to be a good spouse. I want to follow in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, who was the best of husbands, as well as being the best of worshippers, and so on and so forth. I use the month of Ramadan to change my behavior, to change my actions. And it's not going to be an overnight change in any of these things. It takes time. And that's why Ramadan is a major opportunity. Why? Because for 30 days, most of us, we're coming to the masjid for Taraweeh. We're fasting. And so we're conditioning ourselves to say no. We're conditioning ourselves to say no to ourselves. And we're staying away from the halal. The drug dealers stop selling drugs for 30 days. The drinkers of alcohol, they stop the alcohol for 30 days. Those who live a life of promiscuity, they stop the promiscuity for 30 days. And so Allah gives us that opportunity. And so at the end of the month, I hope that we say to ourselves, do I really want to go back to all of that? Do I really want to be that person I was before Ramadan? Or am I going to make that change? Because if I don't, as we said, there is a greater probability of death than the probability of life. And so I'm putting myself at risk. I'm putting myself at risk. And so this Ramadan is an opportunity. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that we cannot afford to miss. And in case we miss it, we have to make the intention now. Don't delay it. Make the intention now. If not now, why? Because you can't focus. After Jum'ah, take some time and make the intention. I'm going to utilize this upcoming Ramadan to become a better person, to become a better Muslim. I'm going to stop sinning. I'm going to start doing the things I should be doing. Why? So that if we die, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts our intention bi'idhnihi. That's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. He tells us through his Prophet alayhi salatu salam, the one who makes the intention to do something but is unable to do it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the reward of that which he intended. And so we need to make the intention to use this month to become the people that we should be, the people that we know we can be, and to leave off the people that we may have become due to circumstance, weakness, whatever it may be. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to utilize the month of Ramadan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us a sincere intention of change, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala change us and use us for the change of others. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد، وارض اللهم عن أبي بكر وعن عمر وعن عثمان وعن علي وعن سائر أصحابك أجمعين. اللهم بلغنا رمضان وتقبله منا يا رب العالمين، وأقم الصلاة.
Please make ladies for brothers.